Hey, Betterness Bays! Welcome to the Good, Better, Betterness podcast. Heads up, this episode takes us back a few months and was recorded on a previous edition of Wellness Wednesday.
What we explored and uncovered then is still true now, and we hope that this lands as a reminder that you matter first and always, full stop. Thank you for making space for us, and more importantly, for yourself.
So let's go ahead and get started. Once again, my name is Denise Raven. Your blog is Brain of Raven, correct?
Yes.
All right. And why don't you go ahead and tell us just a little bit about your story and then your blog if you want, or just, how you came to the current kind of things that you're up to and what you're up to right now.
Yeah. So, of course, I wanted to start off by thanking you all for having me. I am extremely honored and flattered. Reached out to little old me, and very excited to be here. And then even just what you said about fall being a season of like transition and trying to find that balance and harvest. And it was just resonating with me so much. So definitely excited to be a part of your thriving theme for this season. Just to go back to my origin story. So I am a small town girl. I am from El Dorado, Arkansas, super ultra mega country through and through. Live out in the woods with my family. I am a self-proclaimed Southern belle. So I'm an only child, and my mom is one of three sisters, and their mom, my grandma, was everything to me, and she just loved to teach me how to bake and like dress me up in dresses. And I was just laughing with my mom about a joke about how like I was the kid in elementary school. Like I always had a purse. Like I'm on the playground with, because like that's me. Like I'm a lady, honey.
I love it. I have a little niece. She's 5. She's going to be 6. And she is told she's not in the South. She's in the Northwest area. But she definitely has her purses and things on lock. So you would be proud of her.
I'm proud of her. She's doing a good job. Parents and the other influences in life. I think that's hilarious and adorable. And just fair warning, it doesn't go away. It's just gonna get grow extra. Gonna stay extra, and it's most likely gonna elevate. But where was I? Yeah. So, up until I lived in Dallas for 4 years. I do plan to go back. Just kind of in transition. I haven't told anybody like publicly yet, but I'm shopping for a home. So I just came back to my family while I was just kind of in like a transition phase. Nice. But I do call the DFW area my home right now. I do like it there, even though I'm still small town. I'm still really to myself. Like I have my friends out there, and I'm into like more intimate, like coffee dates, as opposed to, out and about on the town, nightlife. And I think that just comes from like me being used to being in a small town, going to a small school, being an only child, just being at home with my family. But yeah, what really started like my season of being a blogger and realizing that I was meant to encourage people and share my story and try to find like commonalities to inspire people. I think it started in college. It was kind of a thing where even now as an adult, I feel like I try to do things well, but a lot of people have like a skill or a talent, and I was like, I don't think I have that. Like, what is mine? And I started to think about like, what do people always seem to value from me, or what's a trend, like a theme that I always hear from my close friends or people that I interact with frequently. And I noticed that it was how people are like, you were just so genuine. You always know the right things to say. You're always so intentional with checking in with me. When I was in college, I would get up every morning for class, and I would send all of my friends a good morning message. So like some people would get kind of a tailored message, like good luck on your test and, great day at work. And then I had like a big group of people who would just get like a copy paste. Good morning. Have a great day. Bye. And
you're like, this is getting big, guys. I got it.
Yeah.
We got to put it on a broader platform. I see where you're going with it.
I had like a template, and then I had a list of like exclusive, customizable encouragement. But I did that consistently for a while, and everybody used to always be like, every time you text me, I just have like such a great day. Or like every time you text me, it really like just changes my whole attitude, changes the course of my week, or I just end up being in a good place, or something good randomly happens to me. And after hearing that so many times, that's what came to me when I was trying to do this reflection of like, what's something that people tend to appreciate about me? What value do I add to the world? And it was that. So of course, life be life, and everybody goes through life. And I was like, I can use these life experiences, though probably not that deep or traumatic to most people. I'm definitely a very privileged person, but I can use like my experiences and the steps I've taken to like overcome emotionally, like, these hardships I had in life. And I can share that, and I can tell people like, this is what brought me closer to God, and this is how I get through it. And it's okay. Even when you do feel like you made a mistake, you made the wrong choice, how do you dust yourself off and keep going? And then also a big thing for me was also to just rebrand being a good girl. That was really important to me. And I know maybe that sounds a bit vague, but I wanted to rebrand being a good girl, because I feel like throughout high school and college, you get a bad rap for being like, you're a goody two shoes, you're holier than thou. Or even if people don't receive me that way, there's certain times where you're like, well, why didn't y'all call me? Why didn't you invite me to do this or that or whatever? You weren't gonna do anything fun. So I wanted to really combat that bad PR and be like, no, like, good girls can still be hot girls. And like, we can still have fun. We just got boundaries. We respect her. Right. Like I said before, we're going to be a lady, but we can do fun. Of course, there are things that, we don't do, and we should try to abstain from the negative things that we know we should stay away from, but we can still have fun. We still dress up, still go to brunch. Yeah. Still have a mimosa,
Okay, never. No, I think that that balance that you speak of is really, really kind of like pivotal and kind of key in the ability to figure out what thriving means for you as an individual, right? So I think sometimes people think I have to be all this or all that, or I have to be like on. I have to always be busy. I always have to be productive, or I have to always be like, if I'm a yogi, I got to be like super, super extra zen, right? And I think that's just not realistic to think that like we're these as individuals, that monotonous, or even as a collective, right? And so when I think of a little bit later, like the statement and the name of our box is "We Are Thriving," right? So when Kayla and I build these boxes, and the statement and the name of the box, it's about the individual, but it's also very much about the collective, right? And so it's like, as an individual, you come to terms with, this is who I am. I have my boundaries, and this is how I want to operate and function in the world. That also requires the conversations and the communication and the connections with your community, right? To be able to be received as who you are and who you are either presenting as, or who you actually are and who you're becoming. It requires a lot of the interconnected pieces of, we don't just live in society as our own individual person, right? So while we are a self-care company and while we are a wellness company, we also want to have people understand and be equipped with what does it also take to then show up in the world as this person that I'm becoming, right? And like you said earlier, it's a consistent evolution, right? You were talking about the evolution of my niece from her purses at 5-year-olds to what her purse situation is going to be at 50 years old, right? but it's a consistent evolution, and you have to be equipped on all sides to be able to have those conversations and with yourself as well as with everybody who's interacting with you. That just kind of came to mind as you were speaking. One of the other things, so I pulled a quote from one of your blogs.
Oh, what?
It's there is no shame in getting the help you need to thrive and be your best. So that talks about a lot of different angles of self-care, right? The shame piece of it, right? The kind of what we were just talking about, like, this is who I am. Like, you can be shameful about that, or you can not, and you can say, this is who I am, and this is how I'm going to move forward. So I just wanted you to talk about, like, when you came to that realization of, like, pairing shame with the ability to thrive, and kind of the process that you had to go through to kind of come to that realization in that quote.
I'm going to echo something you just said. It is a continual evolution. I feel like when you have, like, an epiphany, or you come to terms with, like, I have to overcome shame, it's something you have to, like, continually remind yourself that you have to walk in. So in the quote that you just read, I think it was relating to the fact that I was diagnosed with anxiety and depression and ADHD, I think in, like, 2021. So following the pandemic, it was hard. I lived by myself, lost a job, and was just out. A lot of people lost jobs, got laid off at that time. So I just felt really isolated and really just kind of uncertain in that season, and it took a toll on, like, my mental health. It just put me in survival mode and just shook my nervous system. And so in doing that, realizing, like, okay, I do need to utilize therapy as a, like, consistent resource. I do need to, like, frequently go to therapy. I need to be doing more research. I need to go to doctors. I need to ask questions. I need to be reading up on what I think resonates with me, and really begin this journey of how do I get help for myself, because everybody's journey is different. And for me, that also includes medication. So I take medication for anxiety and take medication for ADHD. And for the past year, I've still been meeting with doctors regularly to check, like, okay, is this working? Is this dosage? Should we try this medication? And we still haven't figured out the right mix, but I feel like in progress. And so I wrote that, just being transparent and saying, like, there's no shame in coming to the realization that you do need help. And as long as you're going about it in a healthy way, there's no shame in asking for help and receiving that help, and even taking the action items that you need to. Because I'll be honest, like, where I come from, very small town, not a lot of people in my family regularly go to therapy. Not a lot of people in my family take medication for anxiety. Even now, like, I'll be honest, like, I think some of my family members sometimes, and I'm like, oh yeah, like, I have ADHD, so I'm all, like, out of sorts, and they're like, girl, that's in your head, like, you're making it up, you know? And sometimes we can tell ourselves that. Sometimes we can kind of have some shame regarding how we're going to be perceived, or just shame ourselves in, if I have this, then it puts me in a box, or I have to go by, like, this label, or if I have this and I label myself, maybe somehow I will cognitively make myself start kind of acting out these symptoms. Like, sometimes I ask myself that, like, before I had ADHD, like, it was apparent that I had it. Like, I was very scattered and very forgetful. But ever since I got diagnosed and I've been trying to figure out how to combat it, I feel like my symptoms have gotten worse. And so even now, that doubt creeps in, and I ask myself, am I making it worse now that I know? So I'm very open. I feel like sometimes I'm too forthcoming and it's probably like irrelevant to the conversation. I just walk up to somebody in Target and I say, "Hi, I'm Raven. I take medication for anxiety and ADHD," because I want to normalize it.
Mm-hmm.
I want I want to destigmatize it, and I want everyone who is especially close to me, like, to know that I'm a safe space, and that you can express that, like, you need help and you're looking for resources, and that you're even, because we live in a society where we see everybody's highlight reel, and we want to keep up that image as well. We see where everybody is doing well, bought a home, got married, got a car, going on vacation, and those people have a beautiful life, but I'm sure behind the scenes they had to work hard, save the money to buy the home. They had to plan a wedding. It was probably stressful. Probably broke up 3 times and trying to plan the wedding.
Right.
Yeah.
Plan the wedding 3 times, right?
Exactly. So it's like those people had like bloopers that didn't make the movie,
right?
You know, the good scenes. So we try to live our lives in comparison to someone's highlight reel, and we feel bad when we have our own kind of like outtakes and bloopers behind the scenes. And I think we shame ourselves. I'm guilty of like shaming myself for moments when I don't feel like I have it all together.
Mm-hmm. It's interesting. One of the, we talk about like, we call it comparison poison, at Betterness Box, because it's, and I think social media just like exacerbated that, right? Like it put it on a pedestal of like you said, it's somebody's highlight reel, and you're really comparing yourself to just not a fair sense of reality. But in yoga, so I'm a certified yoga instructor, and one of the things that we learned, people are always like, I can't go to yoga because I am not flexible, right? So like, I like to use yoga as an example because when you think about the comparison piece of it, right? It's a physical thing that you can see, so it makes it a little bit more real, right? People are like, I can't do this headstand that person on the mat is next to me is doing, right? And what I like to try to tell people is yoga is not about the next person. It's legitimately about like minding your own mat, right? Like mind your own business. It's almost like minding your own mat. And really, if all you did today was show up and breathe, that was your yoga practice. And that's really when you start to get to a place where you can start to process, like, where am I at, right? Where am I from a vulnerability perspective? Where am I from a dealing with the shame that I've placed on myself perspective? Where am I from the perspective of dealing through and giving myself the same level of grace that I give to other people? It's really not until you kind of meet yourself in your own space, and not what you see, right? And that's why yoga to me is like a very, very easy kind of like analogy, because that is very intimidating, right? You see that it's intimidating to walk into a yoga studio and you are like, I don't even know how to lay flat on my back without my mind racing.
Yeah.
You're not supposed to do that, right? But nobody tells you these things, right? And so when you're looking at social media, you're comparing life to all these different things. We have to kind of pay attention to all the other stuff that's going on in order to get to a place where we can actually start to process for ourselves and really understand that like where you are is okay, where I am is okay, where you are in that individual process. The fact that you're acknowledging that it's a process that you have to go through, right? The fact that you acknowledge that like I placed the shame on myself. There's a book that we read. I can't think of the name. It's Brene Brown, and I believe her name is Tashara. And the whole book is about Black people, vulnerability, and the shame that we place on ourselves because of things that society does, other people do, or like just that we experience that has nothing to do with who we actually are, but everything to do with like the shame that we place on ourselves and how we carry that into every single day and how that kind of like shapes our lives. But it's really interesting, right? Because it's like we do this. We know that we do it, and everybody does it. It's not just Denise or Raven that does this, right? It's every single person, and it's kind of natural. But in order to kind of like process it and start to get through it, you kind of have to acknowledge it first to start to kind of move forward out of that. The next question I have is kind of tied to that, because I know in your story that you were just telling, you talked about like how your family receives your processing of your own shame, and then like your vulnerability with like how you tell your story, right? So how did the question here is, how did growing up in a small town, right, in Arkansas, influence your journey to self-discovery and finding inner peace, and just kind of like processing some of the different things that you were experiencing in life? Can you just talk about like that small town angle and how like it almost seems like it could be a little limiting, right? Because you're like, I got a bigger hurdle to jump when I'm actually trying to be vulnerable and have those conversations. So I wanted to kind of just get your perspective on that small town feel and how that kind of like either helped or hindered your processing, and then when you were kind of like trying to get the support that you needed.
Yeah. You know what? That question is the answer to the question is two-pronged. So I feel like being from a small town, and am I correct in understanding part of the question is like being from a small town and like my family dynamic, is you're asking that impact?
Yeah.
Being from a small town and like the way my family is, I'm from the country, so my immediate family is not only my parents and me, but also like my grandparents and like my aunties and my cousins. They're like, so my immediate like everyday family, with us being like when I say close, I mean like everybody that lives on my street, like out here in the woods, is related to me.
You mean honey, like close, like we right here,
like woke up in the morning and like we across the street to my grandma's house, and like that's my everyday life. But because that was the case, even though we might have differences of opinion, and I think it might maybe for me also just be a personality trait, I'm still very like vocal. I'm still very opinionated. It's a double-edged sword for my parents. I think they respect it and admire it, but as parents, they're like, man, like this girl is always going to do what she wants and say what she wants, no matter what. So I was comfortable enough to still voice kind of what I was feeling, and make it known, like, hey, like this is the journey that I'm on. I'm just trying to be more mindful, be more self-reflective, or seek help, or whatever phase of the journey that I was on. I was always pretty transparent about it. And if I didn't get the reaction that I wanted, I tried to kind of play it by ear. Sometimes the best move for me at the moment was just to be like, okay, I can accept it. Like you don't agree. I'm just going to kind of like smile and nod, say okay. And then behind the scenes, I'm just going to keep doing what I'm doing. But there are some instances where sometimes I don't read the room correctly. Sometimes I think I can like take the moment to educate and say, well, this is what I've learned and blah, blah, blah. And it don't go well. But sometimes it goes fine, and just say, let me tell you how I came to this realization. Let me tell you what this is doing for me in my life. And let me tell you why this is important to me. And it just depends. But I said the answer was two-pronged because you talked about the limitations. Now, I will say that being from a small town does seem limiting, just in terms of like exposure to just different things. Even at my school, we didn't have like track or like soccer or anything. So like literally limiting to just different experiences, like job opportunities and stuff like that. So I knew when I graduated college that I wanted to move, and that's why I went to Dallas. And I can definitely tell that even in terms of just my preferences, like dairy, like non-dairy coffee creamer and stuff like that, it's just like so unnecessary to my family. Just to, like a small example. So many preferences like that. Being in small, I can tell that I've changed my mindset. Like I don't have as much of a small town mindset. And I do have lofty goals. And in addition to having lofty goals and almost having kind of like a fear of being stagnant, there is this, thank God, there is this ever burning faith that I have that, like, if I do have that goal, even if I'm struggling right now, like, the back of my mind is saying I need to quit procrastinating, but like, there's something in me that knows that, like, God can make that happen and I can do that and I'm worthy of that and I deserve that. But to bring the point home, I think that I also have that mindset because of how I was raised, because of my mom and my grandma, and, teaching me how to be a lady. But in the scope of teaching me how to be a lady, they were like telling me, like, this is why you have to respect yourself, because you are valuable, because you are worth more than rubies, and because we want to protect you. We want to make sure that the life that you want to have, we want to make sure that you can go and get it. And so, like I said, it's a double-edged sword, because it's like my upbringing did seem to have its limitations, but the values it still are, I think, what set apart, because I meet people in the city and they're like, oh my God, who are you? You are just this like breath of fresh air, and like, oh my, like, you are a Southern belle, honey. Like, you something, I don't know what to do with you. And I think that I know that comes from my background, definitely comes from the way I was raised and the experiences from very small up until now with my family.
Yeah, no, I think thank you for sharing that. This next question that I wanted to kind of get into was, it talks a little bit about kind of the foundation that was laid that you were talking about, right? But I think a lot of times we say, practice your gratitude, wake up in the morning, practice, make sure that you're giving grace and being grateful, and, writing it down in a journal or however you choose to practice your gratitude. It's a saying, but we don't necessarily really all the time get into like how to really do that or what that really means. So I wanted to kind of just get your take on the balance between gratitude, like having a gratitude practice, and like preparation, right? So it's not just about the saying that you want something and the manifesting and the gratitude and all that kind of stuff. It has to balance out with, like you were just saying, the foundation and things of that sort. So I'd like to get your perspective on how gratitude and kind of the preparation have played out for you in your kind of currently evolving journey that you're on.
Yeah, when you say preparation, you mean like execute, like what you're seeking, or
from whatever perspective that you think has been the most vital, right? So it could be the foundational perspective, or it could be your own preparation that is actually meeting your gratitude practice and your faithfulness and your spiritualness and things of that sort.
Yeah. So, again, like, I gotta be transparent. Like, I am not perfect at that. I had like a year where I absolutely did not miss a day, journaled every day, and like put it in there. And I still try to make a practice of doing that. I'm still trying to tell myself, like, when I wake up in the morning, I want the first thought in my head to be like, thank you, God, for this day. But we're human. We get distracted and we fall off. But I think that everybody's brain works different. So however you build a habit, however you like hold yourself accountable, or you have to like partner with a buddy to say, hey, text me, remind me to like write down 3 things that, I'm grateful for, or something like that. I think it's very, very, very impactful to have a consistent gratitude practice. And I think that it can absolutely shape your mindset throughout the day, or route your mindset. Like, if you finish the day and you're like, oh, it was a bad day, but write down 3 things that you're grateful for, and you're like, I really can't complain. When you talk about the balance of just like the preparation, I think that it comes from, like you said, that foundation. Like, in order to really understand how being grateful and just really shape your mind. It's like you have to already have that. If you're like Christian, like we're religious, like me, you have to have that foundation and like that faith and like in God and knowing that He's always the source, and you always need to reroute your focus back to Him. And again, like we talked about earlier, just removing that shame. Sometimes I shame myself too, of like I forgot to pray, or, you know, I didn't do my devotional, and just removing that shame and realizing that like the foundation is always God, and like He's always going to like accept you when you're ready to come back, or when you're not come back because you probably just forgot, just got distracted, but like, you know, accept when you're ready to like get back on track. But if you're not spiritual, it can still be that same thing, you know, just that self-doubt or that guilt of like, I haven't been faithful to myself and my own mindfulness or whatever. But just hop back in and really, like you mentioned earlier, do that self-introspection and say, what's keeping me from being grounded right now? What's distracting me right now? What's sucking my time out right now that I need to redirect to something that's more beneficial to my life and my mental health and my self-care. So yeah, and again, when you say preparation, this just like takes my ADHD brain like, ooh. So I feel like when I want to practice mindfulness or even like study my Bible or journal, I have to like curate the vibe. Just me for everything. If I want to read a book, I have to curate the vibe because I need it to feel like I'm in a movie. So when we say preparation, like if you like declutter your environment, you got to make yourself a cup of coffee, you got to light a candle, you got to get like the perfect blanket, you got to put on like a cute lounge, fuzzy, like do that, like prepare your environment and like prepare your schedule to like make the time and make sure that you feel the way you need to feel in order to like fully immerse yourself in the experience of practicing gratitude and mindfulness.
No, I really like that. And that's very key to what we do at Betterness Box in terms of really trying to deliver a full kind of multi-sensory experience to the individual who's receiving each of the boxes. It's about the scent, right? It's about how it feels. You mentioned warm, fuzzy, cozy socks, this is the season for that, right? It's about the scent. Is it oils? Is it candles? Is it incense? Like whatever you kind of choose. It's about the feeling of it, right? We've had silk scarves in the box very intentionally, making sure, like you said, the patterns and the fabrics and everything is in a sense that allows you to be a little bit more open to receiving what you're trying to actually like cultivate. Yep. And I think it's not just about nice things and materialistic things. It's like you said, the decluttering, right? Like I can't even think if there's dishes on the counter or whatever, right? Like you have to be very aware of your own limitations. Yeah. And the things that are kind of distracting you and taking you away from kind of where you're trying to be. And I think that's where, like, from a boundaries perspective, that's where a lot of people kind of just get a little bit like go a little left, right? Because we know what we need a lot of times, or we don't spend the time with ourselves enough to know what we need. And then when we don't know what we need, we're not able to kind of like communicate and be clear with other people in our space around what we need to be able to be in a thriving situation. And so if you live by yourself, it's a little easier to maybe cultivate that space, right? But if you're living with other adults, you have to be very mindful of the fact that, like, hey, I need to at least carve out this room, or I need to carve out this time, right? There's always going to be some angle. I need to carve out this budget. Whatever it is, time, budget, room, space, there's different ways that you can carve out what you need as an individual to be able to create the space for your own ability to cultivate your self-care practice or your spiritual practice or whatever you're trying to do, whether that be gratitude or whether that be yoga, right? Or just whatever you're trying to carve out that space for. A lot of times it is going to be, do I have the time? Do I have the space? Do I have the right environment? Do I have the budget or the money, right? If I just need to do a little staycation for 2 hours or 2 days, right? But you have to be kind of tapped into your own levels of depletion almost, right? To start to understand, like, how do I proactively start to carve out what I need, because everybody else is carving out what they need out of your time and space, right?
And we'll
deplete it on your behalf if you allow them to. So that's really like, you know, when you're thinking about just like self-care and your own mental state and things of that sort, it really is about like, who's looking out for me? If I'm looking out for everybody else, Black women, we know we always are looking out for everybody else. But you also have to make sure, at least I have to be looking out for me. Hopefully there's other people who are looking out for me too, right? I always appreciate the friend who says, hey, do you have the capacity to have this conversation? Because some stuff is going on, right? Versus, you know, a friend that's just going to pile it on you and not necessarily pay attention to the fact that all these, there's capacity when it comes to, people have capacity, right? When it comes to certain things.
And speaking of capacity, like, I feel like everything that we've touched on, like every question that you asked me at the source, it's really like, you can't pour from an empty cup. So it's like you have to start with yourself. Everything that we discussed today, it really does start with that introspection. Like, am I judging myself? Am I putting shame on myself? Or even if it is just, I feel fine, but you know what? I need to make some more time for mindfulness, for gratitude, for prayer, for devotional time. Like, okay, how do I set up the circumstances to do that? Do like time, budget, space, all of that? Or, you know, do I need to curate a vibe for myself? What senses do I need to stimulate to best enjoy this experience? So I think it can go from like very deep to kind of like more surface level, like, but it really does start with self and introspection and like being honest with yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Like I said, remove that shame and end it up the way you need it to.
Yes. So I know we're coming up at the top of the hour. And I like what you were just saying of it's interconnected, right? This has kind of been a theme as well in terms of our entire conversation, but it also starts with you. So when we think of thriving, right, the sheer definition of thriving is to grow, to develop, to prosper, to flourish, right? But at Betterness Box, we're really not shy about the fact that it takes the balance in things and the harmony of rest and action, the balance of preparation and gratitude, the balance of all these different things in order for you to actually come out at any kind of end, right? Whether it's your beginning, the end, whatever side you're coming out of that process at, in some kind of resemblance of what you believe to be thriving. That's a very individual thing, but like I said, it is connected. So when you hear like, we are thriving collectively, right? The name of our box, the name of this season that we're in, what comes to mind? Like what it starts, I know it's like, it's internal, but then it's also like, what does it look like collectively as a community to be able to say proudly, we are thriving?
When you phrase it that way, like as a community, we are thriving. For me, it looks like not only are we because everybody else is going to have like their own individual definition of like what feels good to them. But not only does every individual have their own sort of sense of like self-gratification, but everyone is also contributing to the whole with something positive. So if I say, when me and my friends are like, oh, I'm so proud of us, all of us are thriving, it just means like all of us are healthy, whole, and like striving toward goals that are purposeful for our lives. Everyone, it has something positive going on in terms of like new opportunities or new hobby or opportunity to learn. So I think that it really does look similar to that. Like we're thriving. It means that we're helping each other. We're empowering each other. We're doing positive things. We're not being stagnant. We're learning. We're growing. And even if we do kind of have like a down season, we can still say, okay, I'm content. I'm going to be grateful. I'm going to be cognizant of how do I make the best of this and how do I like reflect and really take the time to think about what is this season teaching me. And then also I still want to contribute to my community in the best way I can. So even when my friends are like killing it and I'm like, I'm over here looking crazy in the house, I'm still going to say like, I'm so proud of you. Great job. Like, let me know if I can make me something on Canva, or, let me know if I can come to your event, blah, blah, blah. I'm sorry, I'm so long-winded. Sorry. So yeah, I think it's definitely like, just positive, community engagement and everybody contributing to the whole.
Now, what I like that you highlighted is, it's like I said, it is the highs and it's also the resting period, right? So like when I think of We Are Thriving, it's embracing that ability to rest, and it's embracing the balance of it all. Because you can't you can just run on high adrenaline, right? And you have to kind of go into these, everything's kind of like in cycles and things of that sort. So thank you for sharing your perspective on that. One last question here. I know that you have a blog. So at the very end, I want you to be able to share your blog, your Instagram handle, where people can find you. But what do you hope that in kind of, I know that you've said that your life purpose and kind of your access to your own level of vulnerability and sharing your story is really very much in tune with and aligned with your life's purpose. What do you hope that people learn from the work that you're doing individually, and then kind of just like the work that you're putting out and sharing with others?
That you're always going to be okay. Like, if you hit 2 Chainz say, you woke up this morning, you win it. Like, you're always going to be okay. You can make mistakes and you can bounce back. You can make a decision and then change your mind. You can always learn new things. You can always recover. You can always start over, and you can thrive even when you don't feel like circumstances look ideal. Truly, you can, like I said, list 3 things you're grateful for and realize, like, nope, still thriving. Like, I'm complaining about first world problems, but all my needs are met. I'm blessed. So yeah.
Fabulous. Well, thank you for sharing that. One last thing I would like you to share. Once again, if you're just chiming in, my name is Denise. I'm the co-founder of Betterness Box. And today I was joined by Raven of Reign of Raven, the blog. She is a lifestyle blogger, and she's based in the Texas/Arkansas area. We are in our We Are Thriving season of Betterness Box, meaning you have about 1 more month. We are in November, so this is the last month of our We Are Thriving season before we go to She Is Ready. That is for the preparation that takes you into the 2024 season. So that is a little preview at what's going to be coming and dropping in December. But Raven, thank you very much for joining us today. Thank you very much for your vulnerability and your ability to just like share your story with us today. Why don't you just kind of close us out and let us know where people can find you, if you have any projects or anything that you're working on, newsletters, resources, whatever you have for the people, go ahead and let them know where they can get more Raven.
Well, you can always get more Raven on Instagram at Royally Southern. So that is RHOYALLY Southern. And my blog is reignofraven.com. I have to be transparent. I had a lot going on, life transitions and stuff, so I took a break from the blog for a while, but it is my goal to be consistent in putting new content on there. So be on the lookout for some new from me. But yeah, I am so excited, and I appreciate you guys giving me the opportunity to just, like you said, share my vulnerability. And this really was a good opportunity for me to kind of step my toe back into the pool of, really walking in my purpose and speaking about things that I'm passionate about. So I think this is a good confidence booster to of things. So I really appreciate you.
We appreciate you as well, and we hope that you have a great evening. Once again, thank you for joining us, and this will be shared on our Betterness Box. So if you want to continue to share it, I don't know if you have a newsletter, you can totally there'll be a link and all of those things for everybody to join. Once again, I am Denise, and I was joined by Raven today. Raven, thank you very much for your time this evening, and really appreciate you and hope you have a good night. Thank you.
Thanks so much. Bye-bye.
Take care.
Hey sis, we thank you for honoring yourself by taking the time to listen to the Good, Better, Betterness podcast. Thank you for joining us on the journey to betterness.